Imagine walking into a room where a family gathers around a beautifully adorned figure, dressed in their finest clothes. A photographer stands in the corner, adjusting his lens, as the family poses with solemn faces. At first glance, it seems like a typical family portrait, but there's something unsettling about it. The figure at the center isn't just still, they're lifeless. This isn't just a portrait. It's a memento mori, a photograph of the dead. In the mid-1800s, photography was still in its infancy. The daguerreotype, an early form of photography, had become a way to capture the likenesses of loved ones. But in a time when diseases like tuberculosis, cholera, and influenza were rampant, death came swiftly and often unexpectedly. For many, this was their first and last opportunity to capture the image of their deceased loved one. Taking photos of the dead, known as post-mortem photography, was a common practice in the Victorian era. For a grieving family, it was a way to memorialize the deceased, to keep their memory alive in a world where photographs were a luxury, not a norm. The practice might seem macabre to us now, but in an era before the digital age, it was seen as an act of love and remembrance. These photographs were often highly staged. The deceased would be posed as if they were still alive, sitting in a chair, lying peacefully in bed, or even propped up by hidden stands to appear as if they were standing. Their eyes, often painted on the closed lids, stared blankly into the camera, giving an eerie sense of life where there was none. Family members would often pose alongside the deceased, dressed in their best attire, attempting to look as natural as possible, creating a permanent image of togetherness, even in death. In some cases, photographers would go to great lengths to make the deceased appear lifelike, employing techniques like using mirrors or painting rosy cheeks on the image. These portraits weren't just for the immediate family. They were sometimes sent to relatives or displayed in homes, a constant reminder of the departed. As the 1900s approached, this practice began to wane. Advances in medical science meant that people lived longer, and death wasn't as much of an everyday presence. The growing accessibility of photography also meant that families could capture images of their loved ones while they were still alive, making post-mortem photography less necessary. Moreover, societal attitudes towards death began to change. The Industrial Revolution brought about rapid modernization, and with it a desire to distance oneself from the harsh realities of life, including death. The rise of the funeral industry also played a role. Funerals became more professionalized, and with embalming and open casket viewings, families no longer needed a photograph to remember their loved one. They could see them one last time before burial. Today, post-mortem photography is largely seen as a relic of the past, a haunting reminder of a time when death was a familiar visitor in every household. But these photographs, though eerie, offer a poignant glimpse into how people once dealt with grief, remembrance, and the finality of death. They remind us that, in the face of loss, the need to hold on to the memory of those we love is timeless. So the next time you see an old photograph, perhaps one with a figure who seems just a little too still, remember, you might be looking at a moment frozen in time, literally. A final portrait, taken to capture not just the likeness, but the essence of a life that once was. In our modern world, where we can snap a photo in an instant, it's easy to forget just how precious a single image used to be. But for the Victorians, post-mortem photography wasn't just a way to remember the dead. It was a way to keep them with us, to defy the inevitable, if only for a moment. And though this practice has long faded from common use, the photographs remain, ghostly echoes of a time when death was just another part of life.